Sup nerds! We're back with the Nerd Bucket that showed us the analog pocket, and this time he wants to show us the Miyoo Flip. The Miyoo Flip is definitely the newest device we have shown in this channel. We've mostly been showing off old stuff for now, but it is definitely fantastic to see something new like this. Just prefacing this, we think this handheld is just good enough. Starting with the outside as per usual, at the bottom we have the charging USB port and the audio out for headphones. On the right we do have the micro SD slot for ROMs, the power button, and the power LED lights. At the top we have the HDMI port, the second USB port for peripherals like controllers, and the shoulder buttons of course. To the left, we do have the volume rocker for up and down, and a second micro SD slot for the OS, but that can also hold ROMs as well. In the back, we have some stats, some information regarding the built-in rechargeable LiPo battery, and it says, and I quote, "Only can use certified charger, the battery may explode in the fire." And below, we have some of the tiniest holes for passive cooling. And there's a very unbranded plain front, which is honestly kinda nice. The biggest thing is of course the hinge, which is pretty sturdy honestly. Holds open positions well, it's tight, and snaps shut. And has two locked positions like so. Seems like a pretty good hinge, just a little snappier and louder than what we're used to hearing on the original SP. The buttons are as close to a Game Boy Advance SP buttons as we've seen. They are extremely shallow and gently clicky. All the buttons here are probably dome switches, not rubber membranes. Though it does have a rubber membrane underneath to soften the click up a little bit, which is nice. The analogs also click for the L3, R3, which is something that is not granted for all these Linux handhelds that have analogs. They are quite comfortable, just not exactly the same as the Game Boy Advance SP. But they are just close enough. Even the triggers and bumpers are extremely shallow and soft clicky. You can see how short the travel distance they have. In fact, they're soft enough that with the travel distance, you can pull them down instead of pressing them straight down. The way the power button works, if you just press it once, it won't do anything. You have to hold it for half a second, which I think is a really great configuration, so that you don't accidentally turn it on in your pocket, nor do you have to hold it in for a long time. The screen is again just good enough. It's fairly dim compared to most other handhelds, and the brightness controls are not that varied yet, at least with the stock OS. This stock OS is pretty bare bones. The menu has the recent games, favorite games, game, which opens up the pre-configured emulators, which may or may not be configured right. They do have inconsistent artwork, and it comes with a bunch of pirated ROMs, most of which you aren't going to play anyway, because some of them are in different versions, or sometimes they don't even work, or even just be in different languages. I will show you an alternative front end in a bit, but the way this one is set up is mostly the best it can be in stock experience, no custom firmware. So it is just using Retroarch backend. Then there's a separate Retroarch tab, which doesn't open an app, but just opens a second menu with the emulators again. And you can see here that this menu isn't even in English, it's in Chinese. So the stock OS experience is very lacking. Not only that, but it does come with a poorly configured ports of pirated games like Balatro and Celeste, which, especially with indie devs, why not just buy their games on Steam to support them? And as you can see here, the brightness setting doesn't actually change that much. It's very limited in its range, it's not quite good enough to play out in the sun, and not quite dim enough to play comfortably in complete darkness while in bed. But something you can do is adjust the color manually to make it very dark, but at the same time, you will have to adjust it again manually if you do play in brighter places, which is not the most convenient. But this is how this Nerd Bucket likes to set up his, having it a little darker when he plays. It does have a turbo input option where you use the menu button to set up the turbo. You can see the buttons are very responsive. They're pretty much the star of the show. So here, EmulationStation will be used to show how this Nerd Bucket has gotten set up. And despite some hiccups, he still thinks this is the best way out of it. Of course, since this is EmulationStation, there are a few things you can mess around with. And it is nice that you got the Game Boy Advance bezel down here. As you can see, there is a screen overlay there. We also have the Game Boy Advance color correction on, which we did talk about before on the Analog Pocket video. Go check it out later if you haven't yet. And some shaders to give it the Game Boy Advance look. Since this is not a pixel perfect scaled screen, everything is going to look just a little stretched, but it does look good enough. And you can see the OS here. We do actually like it quite a bit. It's just simple, kind of like the Miyoo UI. Save and load state, native menu brings up the Retroarch configuration. NatPlay if you have games that work with that. Reset restarts the console, and exit game of course goes back to the main menu, which in this case is EmulationStation. In this case we do also have DSP and a bit of bass boost on to get a bit of that Game Boy Advance sound, because the speakers on this are not really the best. They're a little shrill again, just good enough. Here's an example, and this is at max volume. There's also a secret shortcut that had to be looked up, and it is hold start and use the L and R buttons to change the brightness from 1 to 10. Which again, it is a minimal change, but it is nice that there is a shortcut for it. So here's an actual Game Boy SP, of course. They're not exact matches, but again, they're close enough. And the weight of this thing is really only about 5% more than the Game Boy Advance SP, which again, is not the same, but pretty close. One thing that does feel different, despite it being pretty close in thickness when it's closed, the base part of the flip, where you hold, is definitely thicker than the SP as you can see here, and the screen is a little thinner. But despite that, the hinge location is pretty much in the same place. Of course, this Game Boy Advance SP has the modded IPS screen. But here you can hear the speaker difference. The SP is still better. Let's test some games now. First, some Mega Drive. course, to no one's surprise, it does run pretty great. Most of the older stuff, pre-PS1, runs pretty great on, well, most devices now. Nintendo 64 doesn't really shine on this thing. I think it's just better for Game Boy Advance and the other 32-bit type of games. Because for the other stuff, the cores here are outdated, there are graphical glitches here and there, and it's just not quite powerful enough. Not to mention the controls are not perfect for it either. So N64 is just good enough. Many games will work, but even at the lowest settings it will have some graphical glitches here and there, and a few slowdowns. So good enough to be playable, but that's about it. Same with PS1, most games work pretty well, but you still see bugs and glitches. Not to mention some slowdown on certain games. Which is why again we say it's just good enough. Everything about it is just good enough to be passable or close enough to a Game Boy Advance without it being as good as the Game Boy Advance. Sound, pixel density, feel of the buttons, all that. One of the nice features on it though is the sleep function. It does work. So when you close the lid, it will turn the screen off and go into the low power standby mode. And if you wait long enough, the green light will go off and you will go into a deeper sleep mode. And in most cases, just opening the screen will turn itself back on, which is much nicer than the slow boot time. Huh, no idea why he went to sleep there. Some of the stuff on the stock OS is just half-baked, not being fully ready for a complete 1.0 development. So yeah, bottom line, it is a pretty decent handheld if you want to play some of the older stuff, like the 32-bit stuff on it, and you can still play many of the PS1 and N64 stuff on there if you really want to, but you will have to deal with some graphical glitches here and there, and the occasional slowdown. Maybe the experience will be better with eventual custom firmwares that may come to this, but as far as stock OS goes, this is most likely as good as it gets at the moment. But that's how it is with most Miyoo handheld. The Miyoo Mini and the Miyoo A30 also, they were all much popular after people have made custom firmwares for it, making it a much better experience than the stock OS. So here's to hoping that custom firmwares will make this much better. But that's all we had to show and say about the stock OS experience at the moment with the Miyoo Flip. Do you have one of these? Do you plan on picking one up? Let us know in the comments down below, leave a like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe to see more videos like this, and as per usual, always nerd on.